Hi, and welcome to Regenerative Revolution. I'm Jacki Saorsail, and I am here with David Braden. And you are joining us for a fishbowl consulting session. I'm working with David to help him with his organization, the Living Systems Institute, where he is starting a new cooperative for people who do regenerative gardening to work in other people's lawns. It's this whole regenerative landscaping cooperative, and he would just be kind of the coordinator of this and help connect the gardeners with the landowners, with the homeowners, and then the food that was grown, some will go to the homeowners, but if there was more, if there was excess, it could go to cooks. So it's called the Cook and the Gardener Partnership because you're bringing together the gardeners and the cooks and making the food and giving the food and cooking the food and serving the food. It's a whole thing. It's fun. So what we've been doing is going through this regenerative enterprise design canvas, which you see right here. Go ahead and pull that up. I am filling this out for David. It's right underneath me. And this has all the basic components of a business plan, just summarized really shortly. And I've been filling this out. And to do that, I've been asking him questions off of this lovely worksheet. So you as the audience get to look over my shoulder and watch me ask questions and type into this document. David can't see this document because I don't want him to be distracted by my typing. I'll just be asking him the questions and we'll be having a conversation. And if you are live with us, then you can ask questions. You can make suggestions. You can bug us about anything. There's a chat room right over here. Currently we're on Twitch, but I think I'm actually going to move this over to YouTube because my videos are all on YouTube, and I think it's easier to get to YouTube, and I want to make it less confusing. So you're probably going to see all of our future episodes live streamed directly to YouTube and everything uploaded there. But right now we're on Twitch. We'll see if anybody joins us. But here we are. And before we get started, let's just have a little check-in. How are you doing, David?
I am doing well. We've had some positive responses. And just wanted to say, and the whole goal is to grow what we want to eat and eat what we grow. And that's one of the things we were talking about earlier is this is the season when we butcher our little chickens that we hatched out May 15th. And those will go in the freezer, and then we'll be making squash soup and chicken soup all winter long from things that we produced on our own little acre here. So
awesome. That sounds great. Cool. Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of gardening. Grew a bunch of squash, but I can't eat the squash because I'm on the keto diet. So I just been letting other people eat it. But, you know, it's fun growing squash anyway. And I've got a few little things growing here. I've got some sprouts and whatnot at my house. So that's fun. And yeah, thinking about putting some plastic over the hoop house at the community garden. Hopefully we can raise some money to get the plastic. It's not too big. It should cost about $100 to get plastic for it. But maybe I keep going through the winter. That'd be cool. So yeah, that's what's going on with me. So yeah, let's get started here. So let's just look back a second. Last time we were talking about your market and your delivery, and we talked about who you're working with, which is people within easily traveling distance from a gardener. So it's kind of locally based, but it's around the gardeners that you're working with, not necessarily around you. So they could be far away from you. You're just supporting them in the structure of how they would get clients and work with those clients. And so they could be anywhere, really. But you're focusing on the Denver area right now because that's where you are. So you want to, have people who can come visit you to get this going. And then you are having some meetings to enroll people in this, and yeah, you're marketing that on different platforms, mainly Facebook. We talked about maybe you getting on Nextdoor. Have you gotten on Nextdoor yet?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
But I'm recommending that to my gardeners. My neighborhood has a fairly active Facebook page that I am on. Plus, we do the Denver Permaculture, which defined our gardeners. Denver Permaculture Discussion Group, it's called.
Yeah, yeah, and you're talking about maybe making some door knockers, which would cost some money. So we're talking about money today. So that's maybe something we could bring up. And you gave a little story about how your organization would work. So yeah, we're now at financial goals. So the whole system that you've told me about so far sounds like it's pretty low input financially, at least ongoingly. You're going to be collecting 5%, I think you said, of the income from the gardeners, and this is just from the $100, or what, or was it for all of the services that they sell? You'd be collecting a percentage, or was it just on the $100?
Well, so right now, Living Systems Institute is a 501c3. And so I can offer the homeowners a tax deductible contribution for the $100. But I don't want to push that because if we are in fact running a business as opposed to doing this job training and environmental healing experiment, I don't think it qualifies as a educational or research, which is what our charitable deduction is all about. But so right now, that's the way it's set up, is that homeowner would agree to pay $100 per month for a gardener's 4 hours of work. And they're certainly free to agree to additional work over and above that, but I don't think they're entitled to the tax deduction for that.
Right, but would you still be collecting 5% on any more work?
So I'm not set up to do that right now.
Okay, because of the nonprofit thing, or?
Well, because it's hard to explain to people more than anything else. And does that apply to if they go out and buy a bunch of drip line supplies? Do I get 5% of that?
Oh, right.
So we haven't gotten to that point yet. In the long run, that's going to be up to the gardeners. That's not going to be up to me. They're going to have to decide, these are the things we want to pool our money to accomplish. And given the level of income that we've got, that's going to be 5%, 10%, 15%. It depends on what kind of value the partnership can deliver to the gardeners and cooks eventually. But so right now it's just set up there as we're experimenting. And I have one of my gardeners who is a bookkeeper, and she sent me this wonderful little calculator where we can plug in different numbers about how many homeowners and how many gardeners and what percentage we're going to use, and then try to figure out where break even is in terms of that. She suggests to me that she thinks we're going to be easier to bring on homeowners if we're using a payment service like PayPal, in which you've got a fee. And so she thinks to cover that fee, we need to have, in addition to the $100 a month, we need an annual fee. And my concern is that you're going to lose homeowners that would otherwise sign up if you charge an additional fee. And right now they can, I'm starting to babble, but right now they can pay through PayPal. And the first gardener and I were just eating those fees. And then she went to all of her homeowners and said, it's easier for me if you have your bank send us a check directly, rather than go through PayPal. Plus we don't have to eat those fees. So, those are the kinds of things that I don't want to be in the position of the person that's making those decisions as soon as possible. I want to have the gardeners making those decisions.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. So yeah, for the sake of this, we'll just estimate and try to figure out, how much you'd like to make, kind of figuring you may or may not have to take fees out of that. And you are working with your accountant there to come up with that break even point. So maybe I don't need to spend a lot of time on that with you, but I'd like to give my 2 cents in. Yeah. I kind of have to side with her on the yearly fee. Like, it doesn't have to be much, but I feel like to incentivize them to stick with it, like through the season, and to have them feel like they're a part of something, like they've joined, like kind of taking that step in. I feel like there's something about it that feels just good to me, and like the joining and commitment aspect. Plus, it would give you a little extra money, and maybe you wouldn't have to worry about those fees anymore. It could be
Sure.
like $25 or something. You know what I mean?
Well, and where we are, she's suggesting $75, and I think that might be a little high. But maybe you're right. Maybe a $25 fee would be just something that they could absorb without too much question about it.
Okay, let's put that down with a question mark. Yeah. And then, yeah, 5%, but then you're not sure then if you take 5% of what they, and it totally makes sense with them having to buy, supplies if that's part of the contract. So like, let's say they had a contract with the homeowner for, $1,000 to put in a area with drip line and plants or something, and that would include everything they're having to buy, for that. Like, are you going to take 5% of $1,000? That would definitely give you some money to do some marketing and stuff for them, which once you get them on board, maybe they'd want. But, on the other hand, it is a big chunk of money. So, yeah, I think you're right. Like, leaving that decision up to them.
Sure.
Makes a lot of sense. I could see it going either way, but okay, cool.
So, yeah. Once we get to something like, are we going to provide health insurance for our gardeners and cooks? Mm-hmm. Then that makes much more sense. Or maybe just a basic, we're going to do all the billing and collections and payment processing, and take our 5% and cover all those costs. And then you just do your work and you get a check every month. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Those are the types of things that we would be talking to them about.
Yeah, that sounds good. Another option could just be like, rather than 5%, it could be like, if it's a contract for between $0 and $100, it's $5. If it's a contract between $100 and $500, it's $10 or something like that, where it's a smaller amount and maybe dependent somewhat upon the size of the contract, but not quite a percentage or something.
Or as we grow, we can take a smaller percentage going forward.
Yeah, something. Lots of ways to go with that. Alrighty. Yeah, so I'm filling this out on the question that says list your possible investment sources and revenue streams. But going back or backing up for a second, yeah, I was saying that like the operational costs aren't very high, but as you're just telling me before we started, you're wanting to hire another consultant to help you who's local, who can help you with some of the structuring and getting this going, and you need a lawyer, and there's this accountant. So you need some money to pay for professional advice. So. Professional services. So, yeah, do you have any idea what the total amount of that might be that you're going to need to raise in the next year or two?
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
So we're in the beginning of trying to come up with those numbers, and also how are we going to go about and do the fundraising, and what is the expense of that going to be? I mean, you need a 3-minute video or something like that. And my consultant tells me that she can help me with that as well, but we haven't gotten into any of those details yet.
Cool. I'm feeling a little stumped here because, like, I have some information, but not enough to answer these questions. So I'm feeling a little.
Sure. When I was doing business organizations, you could set up a corporation with bylaws and articles and all that stuff for maybe $250. But we want a little bit more specialized information or consultation. And so maybe we're taking, I don't know if it's $500 or $1,000 $1,500 in order to do what we need to do to make this a success.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, it's tricky. There's not very many lawyers who know much about cooperatives, and the ones that do, like Jason Weiner, there charges a lot because he has so many people who want to work with him. You could work with one of his assistants as well, like Linda. But still, you could dole out a lot of money that way, or you could just kind of write them yourself and run it by a lawyer who's just going to kind of go, well, it's good enough. But they might not know enough about cooperatives to really know,
sure.
So, I mean, I've met organizational lawyers who literally did not know what a cooperative was.
Yeah, and that's probably me back when I used to do that sort of work. So that's why I'm interested in finding somebody that has some experience in this sort of, worker-owned business, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How are we going to structure the decision-making and the ownership?
Yeah, I hope you can, run this by Jason. Okay, so let's just write down what we have for these questions. Maybe we can get through them quickly and then move on to the next part, which is about structuring. So your financial goals for the organization in the next year, in 3 to 5 years, and then more than 5 years. Okay, I'm just going to throw out some numbers of really rough estimates. I am guessing that for a lawyer and all the professional fees, it's going to be at least $10,000.
Okay.
From the estimates I've gotten from Jason. You might be able to find a cheaper deal, or it might even cost more. But let's just put that as a goal: $10,000. Try to get that.
Raising effort, right?
Yeah, and then so you'd want to get that in the next year. So yeah, if you could do a crowdfunding campaign and raise $10,000, it's not it's not undoable. It's doable, but at least that much. And then after that, so if you're talking about bringing in 5% of $100 per customer per month, and how many gardeners do you think you could sign up in the next year?
I don't know how many. I'm likely to. I don't know the likeliness of this, but I think it's a chicken and egg thing where if we had homeowners, we could find gardeners. If we had gardeners, we could find homeowners. So if what I just presented to my, I've got 16 gardeners on my emailing list right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many of those are going to step up and say, yes, I want to go out and find clients.
Mm-hmm.
But if we had 10 of them go out and actually find 20 homeowners to work with, then we're looking at 200 homeowners, $20,000 a month, and then 5% of that is what, $1,000, I think. $1,000 a month to do the bookkeeping and put a sum aside for paying for the liability insurance for the partnership and that sort of thing.
$100,000 a month for bookkeeping and liability insurance.
Yeah, and that's about all you're going to cover, I think.
Yeah, that's. Like, on the one hand, I appreciate that it's lean and I want to keep it lean, and on the other hand, I'm just like, $1,000 a month, that's like one person working part-time. Like, is that enough to really keep an organization moving forward with like momentum? You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty much just you working on it a little bit. And do you need to like maybe bring on more energy? Can you do that without paying people? Maybe you need to fundraise some money or get like a grant or get a work trader or get a woofer.
Absolutely.
You need a woofer.
Well, yes. Hopefully we can, any kind of the administrative tasks that we have, we would hope to allocate those among the gardeners themselves.
Well, okay. Do you have an idea for how you might organize that? Like, would you require them to put in like 4 hours a month each or something, helping out with that sort of thing?
No,
No.
I have no idea how that's going to work. But it's their partnership.
Mm-hmm.
In any kind of a partnership, the partners contribute to the well-being of the business, and then depending on the role that you're going to play, then maybe there's additional compensation in taking on that role. But then that goes back to what percentage of the income, what income is going to be subject to the percentage. And do we need to increase that $1,000 to $2,000, take 10%, or do we need to grow to 500 homeowners?
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. So I'm imagining how this might happen.
I lost your audio.
I'll fix it. My microphone just drops off sometimes. I have the settings here so I can fix it. Okay. Okay. So I'm imagining how this might play out once you have some people on board. And I think that the piece of like advice I could give you is to go ahead and think through as many of these details as you can and come up with at least a bare bones structure for them to use initially so that they're not just sitting around staring at each other wondering what to do. Like, give them something to start with, and then, they can change it as they need. And maybe what you start with is kind of a bare minimum, just like with this fees is kind of the bare minimum. Then it's up to them to say, actually, this is such a tiny budget. We want more of a budget, and they're the ones making the decision to increase their fees, not you. Starting with the minimum, starting with a very democratic system, and then letting them go, oh, well, maybe we want to have more hierarchy. Like, let them kind of, but give them something, because it really sucks joining an organization and having the person who started it be like, it's up to you. And then everybody just kind of looks around and nobody even wants to say anything. It's so like, you don't want to be that person who like takes power from the leader. Like if I was in that group, I would feel bad if I stood up and suddenly like took over the meeting and started telling everybody, I think we should do this, when you're sitting there and you're the one who came up with the idea. You know what I mean? But whereas if you have at least a structure where there's a way to like vote for ideas, then I can say I would like to submit an option. I have like an avenue to make suggestions that doesn't feel like I'm taking power. You know what I mean?
Right, and that's my goal, to be as light-handed as possible and still make it so that it moves forward, even if people aren't sure exactly how they want to do it.
Right. So yeah, I think it's going to be important that from the beginning you just have an official channel for people to make proposals and have those proposals considered, and not just have it be like whoever's the loudest gets heard. Yeah.
You and me?
That's coming up strong for me because I've been traumatized by that. Just like being in a group where things are going very badly and I would really like to fix it, but I feel like I would have to become like some kind of violent dictator to like take over, and I'm like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to force myself upon anyone. I would like to be invited to have power. I would like to be given power. I would like to be told, here, Jacki, you make decisions. That would be amazing. Anyway. Okay. So at least like $1,000 per year. I feel like that's like a kind of good goal for a minimum of what you need to bring in. $1,000 a month. Yeah, sorry. Sorry. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's 200 homeowners. Yeah, like within a year, it would be nice to get to that point. I don't know. How long do you think you could like be working on this if it was growing really slowly? Like, I'm wondering if you have a limit. Like, how much time do you want to put into this, to get to that point?
Yeah, so I've been working on it for 16 years so far.
Uh-huh.
And this is probably um, this is obviously, this is the closest we've come to actually having a chance of actually succeeding in what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm assuming I live that long, I could do another 16 years, I suppose.
Okay.
But,
Okay. That's cool. I understand. I've been working on an idea for 20 years and haven't gotten anywhere with it. So I get it. Sometimes things have to like ruminate, and sometimes it needs to be the right time. Pieces need to fall into place. When it's time, it's time. Yeah, we get stuff done in the meantime.
Well, we've been revising the presentation, revising the content, working on the language we're using for 16 years. And so some of the original ideas are still involved, but we've also learned a lot in 16 years in terms of, and then society is also moving forward. I mean, it's the concern for climate change and species loss and all the other issues that we're facing is increasing. And aside from the deniers, we have a lot of people that are really concerned about the future with very few positive avenues to take in order to employ their resources in the service of creating a better future for our children. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about marketing and getting this kind of message out. And I feel like in the whole regenerative movement, there's a stuckness happening where like we all get it, but it's hard to get them to get it. Like, like you get the nods, you get the smiles and the nods, and then every once in a while you get somebody who's just like really into it. But like, I don't know, it's hard to get like most people to that kind of aha moment where they get it and want to do something about it and want to join. And I'm kind of feeling like part of it's an issue of safety. Like some people are jaded or skeptical of people talking about sustainability because there's like the whole greenwashing thing, and like they don't want to be fooled or tricked into becoming optimistic about something that isn't going to pay off or something. I feel like there's some skepticism. I feel like we need to get past that somehow. We need to like make people feel safe and invited in. And I think there's also the intellectualism part of it, that a lot of us use big words and make things too complicated. People feel like we're kind of know-it-alls or something. So I feel like we need to talk in a way that's more like conversational and simplify things a little more. And I'm like the worst at that. But
well, believe me, I understand.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to be putting a lot of like thought into this as soon as I finish writing my master's degree. Let me get through the like brainy, using all the big words, and then I'm going to go the opposite direction and try to simplify everything as much as possible. Beginning of next year, full on. But yeah, in the next couple of months, that'll get started. But anyway, yeah, I feel like that's like the hurdle that we all need to cross to get over to really make these things take off, is just telling the story in a way that people understand.
So let me offer something that sometimes works well and sometimes doesn't. But at base, we have a pattern of interaction among living things. And every living thing, every living organism, every plant, every animal, every fungi, every bacteria is doing the best it can with the information it has to be fed, safe, and loved. And the more of those organisms that we can feed and be safe and find love, the healthier our ecosystem is. And it is, that's the simple basic difference between sustainability and unsustainability. If we're allowing more things to become, to be fed, safe, and loved. We're healing nature and our world.
Mhm.
And if we're interfering with that process, then things are running down and our system is unsustainable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
try
want to
to,
like take everything you just said and have my daughter animate a little animated sequence with like little bacteria in the soil crawling around and then like plants and like that's what's coming to mind. Yeah, we need to make it like visually appealing. It's just I don't know. We need to partner with some artists or something, you know? Anyway, okay.
back to money.
Yeah, yeah. And I was just like, we've already talked about some of this stuff, and I feel just a little stuck because, like, I've asked you, like, how much do you want to make? How big do you want it to get? And you're just like, infinite.
Yeah.
Infinite big. I was like, okay, infinite. That's great.
So
Uh,
let's, for that bigness, let's talk about 1,000 gardeners and 20,000 homeowners,
uh-huh.
or $2 million a month.
Yeah,
And then our 5% will pay for quite a bit. But
sure, sure. But yeah, it's a big jump to see how the structure we're making now will get to that point. I don't know. Hmm.
we got a ways to go before we're at 1,000 gardeners.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, let's just put it at that, and then in order to do that, you need 200 homeowners. These are some good goals. Um, what
I'm losing
sources
your audio again.
fixed?
Okay.
Okay, what? Okay, possible investment sources and revenue streams. We already talked about the fees, but then investment sources, crowdfunding. So if you thought any more about how you'd like to do crowdfunding, is there anything that you would offer as like, like people do like T-shirts or stickers or something for people donating? Is there anything like that you thought about doing?
No, I haven't thought about anything along those lines. Um, uh, Sort of a manual would probably be like the best, a short explanation of the difference between a old-fashioned resource-intensive lawn care landscape techniques and being able to cycle carbon on your own property. So maybe something in the neighborhood of a handbook would be the most effective, because then that also explains what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Again, we need an artist to like illustrate. It'd be nice if it looked like a children's book, had pictures. I mean, photographs would be fine too, but yeah, making it visually appealing would be nice. And so yeah, you could have a handbook. Okay, yeah, I kind of got to this point with my other client Isaiah too. Where we start talking about this stuff, and then it's like, well, if you're a cooperative, then what about your membership fees to join the cooperative? Like, what about your initial membership share that people are going to have to pay to be a member of the cooperative? So, have you thought any about that?
I have not, although I think you need to. I'm thinking that is something that you could develop down the road once there is a clear value being delivered to the gardeners based upon the investment that's taken place in the past. Um, having a line on the clients that the gardener is going to be serving, and then also providing these services like bookkeeping and marketing and training and um, access to meals, things like that. Once you get to that point where you're delivering value, then I think you can ask people to buy in,
Yeah,
because being able to deliver that value is going to be based upon the investment that was undertaken by the previous gardeners or participants.
yeah. I mean, something that could change over time would be like some sort of recurring membership fees, but that's not even necessary to have a cooperative. What is necessary to have a cooperative is an initial purchase of one share, and that stays the same the entire life of the cooperative. I don't even think you can change that. I mean, you might be able to, but then you'd have to either refund or demand more money from all of your other members that already joined, because it has to be the same for everyone. So that could be any amount of money. I mean, it could be $25, it could be $100, but you have to collect some sort of initial investment in order for people to be a member of a cooperative.
But a worker-owned business, is that necessarily a cooperative?
Yeah, if you do some sort of an LLC, but then how are they an owner if they don't own anything?
Well, an LLC will have you can structure an LLC to be either a partnership or a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that only has to do with whether the corporation has a separate tax entity or whether everything passes through to the partners.
Sure. But if it's an LLC with a pass-through, then you're talking about a percentage ownership. So is it that the first member that you bring on then shares ownership 50-50 with you? So immediately they have half of the say in everything. They own half of the company. And then if you bring on a third person, then you each own a third. And if you bring on a fourth person, you each own a fourth. Is that how it works?
No, it doesn't necessarily have to, because you can have like a limited partnership where you have the management section and the limited partners. And of course, we would want to include everybody in the management and to have some sort of, there may be a set of steps that you have to go through to be able to have a full vote. But we definitely want to have that open for everybody to get to that point where you're a fully voting member of the organization.
Right. So in a cooperative, like, not everyone who works for the cooperative has to be a voting member at first. It could be something that you have to, sorry. Not everyone has to be a voting member at first in a cooperative. You can have a kind of vetting period. It could be a year or 2 years. And then at that point, they can decide whether or not they purchase that membership share. But at that point, they're an equal voting member. Everyone has one vote in a cooperative. Now, in an LLC, you can write in that everybody has one vote that's a member. You can make it democratic, but by, I'm sure you know this, by default, it's whatever percentage that you own is the percentage of the vote that you get. That's why people keep 51% of their LLC ownership. Or corporation is pretty much the same, isn't it? Yes. But then you think about the number of shares, not just the percentage, right? So anyway, yeah.
Are you familiar with Frederick Laloux and his Reinventing Organization?
Yeah, I've got it right here. It's one of my favorite books. So yeah, I mean that book doesn't really talk much about ownership, though. It talks about the decision-making governance structures.
Right. So that we could have pods of gardeners and cooks that are running essentially their own little business, but taking advantage of the services. So they get to make all the day-to-day decisions on how they're going to be delivering the services. And then all of those pods as a group make decisions about what the percentage back to the larger organization is going to be, those types of things.
Yeah. I mean, and in operational decisions, I always recommend something like...
I think you're going to have to fix your microphone.
I don't know why it keeps doing that. Okay, sorry. I'll keep it where I can see it. Okay. Yeah, so like for operational decisions, I always recommend that kind of a structure. I do think it's the best structure is to have a distributed authority kind of system where people are just assigned very specific roles and they get to make decisions within those roles, and teams get to make decisions about, their their domain, whatever that be, So that is, I think, a really good structure. But then the ownership is a separate thing, and the decision making at the ownership level, which could be limited to just those legal decisions like deciding whether or not to change the bylaws or dissolve the company. Like there are very few decisions are made at that level. But yeah, in a cooperative, it's when you buy that membership share that you get that decision making power. But anybody working for the organization could be a part of that kind of low distributed kind of structure, whatever it is. And yeah, and I like to limit the power of the board and anyway. They don't need to be making operational decisions. It's probably best if they don't. It's just hard. It's hard in the beginning. So I think people get kind of lazy when they're first starting an organization because they're like, well, it's just us. It's just these 2 or 3 people. So why do we need to make a separate decision-making structure for the employees than the board? Because the board is making all the decisions. But, then you grow to the point where, wait, the board's making all the decisions for 500 employees. That doesn't work. So like writing it up front.
Board for 500 employees.
Yeah. Well, I see that in nonprofits mostly. They don't think about the governance outside of, the people who start a nonprofit. Okay. Anyway. Okay, so it sounds like you're a little bit opposed to charging your growers, you're charging your gardeners up front. Anything to join? Is that right?
I don't think I can right now because the value proposition is not solidified to any point where I can promise anything to anybody.
Okay. Well, yeah, you don't have anything yet, but I mean, there are things that you're building. So if you do incorporate this thing, you'll have a legal incorporation structure, and that's worth something, to be a part of that. You have access to that infrastructure. And then you have, your expertise and your garden as a demonstration site. I think that's worth something. Yeah. And
we're talking about the difference between what we're doing as the nonprofit Living Systems Institute, doing the prototyping and testing and research and education. And then part of the end result of that process of the nonprofit is to end up with a legal structure that the gardeners can then take forward.
Sure. But it's the cooperative is in partnership with the nonprofit, right?
Yes. Well, right now it's a project of the Living Systems
Institute. Right. So but that's another resource, and the resources of the nonprofit are then available to the cooperative in some way. And even the 501, like if the cooperative wanted to, have an educational event so that they could recruit more people, you could work together to do an educational event, and they would have access to a 501c3 to put that on, get grants or whatever, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so that's worth something. I think that's worth something. And maybe you don't charge a lot, but I don't know. If you do a cooperative, it needs to be something. So it could be like $25 or $50. Maybe you could have it be the same like fee for the gardeners to join that it is for the homeowners to join, just everybody. And maybe even for the homeowners, it's just a one-time fee. Like it's just kind of this, you're in the club now kind of thing.
Well, it's certainly possible. And I guess I think I mentioned that before is that's probably my weakest point is asking people for money.
Okay. As a gardener. Okay. And this is definitely going to be owned by just the gardeners, or I mean, is the cook and the gardener partnership? Could cooks be owners too?
Absolutely.
Okay, like just the chefs, or what about the homeowners?
Well, the homeowners are a partner in a different respect.
Okay.
So they have a partnership between their gardener and themselves, or between the cook and gardener partnership and themselves. But they don't have a voting in the say of how the cooks and gardeners are going to move forward.
Okay. Or cook. Okay. So yeah, once you have cooks, and I think what I was getting from the cook part was that, you're going to have some larger properties. And so the gardeners would probably have more say, and the cooks as well, over what's grown, when you had like a larger area or a greenhouse where you could do like intensive microgreens or something, because I don't think most homeowners are going to have enough space in their garden to grow like a lot of something to like support a restaurant or something. You know what I mean? Like,
well, depends on how many homeowners and how we structure it. But and that's a cyclical thing.
uh-huh.
So if every homeowner that we had a certain amount of garden space, a chicken coop, and a greenhouse, then and the gardener is sharing in that produce from each of their homeowners, right? Then we have protein and fresh vegetables year round that can form the basis of what we're providing, both for ourselves to consume, and at some level where the cooks could then be offering meals to the public in one fashion or another. But we're not necessarily limited to what we're producing. We want to grow what we want to eat and eat what we grow, because that's the inexpensive part of it. That's the nutrition we get as a byproduct of the other things that we're doing. But if you have a particular menu, we don't necessarily have to source everything from our homeowners, or even from ourselves, because you can always go to Cisco and get, fill in all the individuals, and that goes particularly for the things that we're not likely to be growing, which is the starches.
Wait, okay. So I think I don't understand how big of a part the cook would play in this, because it sounds like if they're going to be buying even other ingredients from the grocery store to make things like, I mean, it sounds like that production of food, that those products are going to be really a part of this organization. Like, you're going to have these products being offered by the Cook and the Gardener Partnership, maybe have that on the label. And I think we mentioned this before, like having pictures of the homeowners. Yeah, okay, yeah, I remember that. So yeah, like you would have your own farmers market booths, your own delivery avenues for all of these food products, and that would be a part of what this whole organization does. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I can't tell you exactly how it's going to work, but conceptually, we're going to support food trucks. And we don't know how many, because we don't know how much food we're going to be producing, but eggs and chickens and fresh fruit and fresh vegetables year round, coming out of the greenhouses and out of our gardeners. Like we're saying, I'm doing those experiments with my chickens and my squashes. You could do a whole menu based on soups, squash soup and chicken soup. But then when you go into producing breads or potato products or things like that, there's no reason why we have to produce everything for those cooks to be able to provide a balanced menu.
Yeah.
Price,
yeah.
Right?
So what that's sounding like is kind of like Earth Elements Kitchen, where I used to work. So my friend April had this commercial kitchen. She started out in Noble, Oklahoma, just south of here, in just this barn, and on her property. And she set up a little tiny little commercial kitchen, and she started making cookies and stuff. And she did have, sources for local ingredients. And when she would have them, like a big bunch of squash, she would like can a bunch of squash, make like, zucchini pickles or something. And she would make a big batch of them, and she would just sell that along with her cookies. But she was making the cookies so that she would have something to sell no matter what. Even if the produce dried up, she'd have something on the shelf that people would buy, which I think was really smart. Unfortunately, while I was working with her, I developed like candida and started like coughing every time I ate sugar. So being around the cookies wasn't really helpful for me, but it was a good business plan for her, and it did work out. It went through lots of twists and turns. So she built onto that little tiny barn, she built a little straw bale bakery. She extended the building out to one side, and I helped build the straw bale extension. And we expanded into that. Then I moved into the loft above the kitchen, and I lived there for a summer and baked with her on the weekends. And I would take all of her stuff to the farmer's market. And at that point, we were making all sorts of breads and, taking the zucchini from the local gardeners and putting it in the bread to make zucchini bread. And when there was lots of zucchini, we would shred it and freeze it in freezer bags. And so she got a walk-in freezer, and so we were making zucchini bread all year round from local zucchini. So yeah, it was like this little local food business that she built up from just cookies, kept adding more and more produce and eggs and milk, all from local people, just as much as she could. And then she built a whole new building next door, a big bakery, and I worked there for about a year. And when I was pregnant, I was like in there stirring jams and jellies over 100-degree stove. It was fun. Yeah, and then after that, I'm telling you this because I want to get to where she ended, because then the state, the highway authority, whatever, they decided to move the highway next to her property and go right through her building. So this building that she had just finished building, they were going to tear down. And she ended up fighting with them for a long time because they were wanting to pay her way less than it was worth. She finally got the money from them. And so she got a building up in Oklahoma City. And she started operating the kitchen out of there. And at that point, she had always offered to rent the kitchen to other people. But since it was way down in Noble, not a lot of people took her up on it. But when she moved up to Oklahoma City, more people took her up on it, and she ended up with lots of people renting out the kitchen by the hour. And eventually she bought an even bigger building, and now she's got like this full huge kitchen with like a gluten-free room and a room that does do gluten. And she's got lots of people who rent it out by the hour and who run their food businesses out of there. So kind of what I imagine you're talking about is something like that. Someone might take on that, and then other cooks would come in and use those ingredients and use whatever space was available. Maybe they would share a space to cook.
So that's the typical American entrepreneurial success story, right? Mm-hmm. And what we would like to do is revise that just a little bit and include the cooks in an ongoing investment in the capacity to provide for ourselves, rather than just to make money. Mm-hmm. So we want to have the partnership lower the cost of living for all of its participants, so that none of them have to, earn tons of money in order to get to survive. But is creating a common pool resource in this capacity to produce food and food, shelter, learning, health, belonging, and purpose.
Yeah, and you're talking about doing it as a cooperative, which I always, when I was working with her, was like, I wish this was a cooperative. That was like constantly coming up for me, but it wasn't my business, so I just kept my mouth shut. But now I'm advising you, and you want to do a co-op. So yeah, I feel like maybe I need to pull you a little bit more in her direction so that I can pull her idea more in this direction and kind of, help create something that's, going to be financially and environmentally and socially sustainable all around. Yeah.
So our goal is to heal nature, produce abundance, pull carbon from the atmosphere, and eliminate poverty. So
but they have to make money to eliminate poverty. So to make sure they're making money, I want to make sure your organization is making enough money to provide them with the services that will help them make money. So
that's right.
Yeah. So okay, some sort of a membership fee, or they need to do something to join, right? Like how are you in now? I don't know. It just, people tend to feel like they're more in when they've made an investment of some sort. And that could be a work trade investment, but, and that's in an LLC. More the way that you might do it is using the slicing pie method. Have you heard of slicing pie?
No,
Okay, it's another book. So the way that you do it is you account for people's contribution using a point system. So if somebody contributes time without getting paid, they would get a certain number of points. Cash investments, maybe a different calculation for the points. Even contributing intellectual property or connections, like enrolling clients and that sort of thing, could give you points. And you just you add up all those points for a certain period of time or until you get to a certain milestone where the organization, you feel like it's kind of that initial startup phase is done. And then you slice the pie, and then you take all of those points, add them together, and then give people a percentage of the ownership based on how many points they've accumulated.
Sure. And so we were, in previous iterations, we'd think of it in terms of earning shares.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you think of getting together in the morning and saying, these are the tasks that need to be accomplished, who wants to clean the toilets? And then then people bid on being able to do that. I would clean the toilets if you gave me 10 shares. Then you have another group that says, who's going to play with the babies this morning? And then you bid, I'm not going to need quite as many shares if I'm just going to be playing with the babies this morning. And then you have a internal marketplace for issuing shares in exchange for the tasks that need to be accomplished. And then you've got the reverse of that. When we as an organization have been producing these meals, this daycare service, this other things, and we want to make sure that all of this gets used.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you bid in terms of the shares that you're holding in order to take advantage of this service that we're providing, or these goods that we have available?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're going to need some way to account for that. And I imagine that, like, if you did get an initial cook who had a kitchen available to them already, that they might want some share for providing that kitchen at first.
Sure. Or we as a group can invest some of that percentage that we're contributing to the partnership to invest in building a commercial kitchen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, but you might also find someone who has one. I mean, there's lots of like restaurants out of business, and there might be people who have one who are like needing something to do with it. It's just one idea you might want to think about.
If we've got an outlet for the meals, we can certainly rent one to start with anyway.
Mm-hmm. 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 Or a food truck. Maybe somebody already has a food truck and they want to be a part of this.
I think you put both of those for a food truck, though. You have a commercial kitchen to get prepared to take the food truck out.
Mm-hmm.
So think of breakfast burritos as our first.
Yeah, we made burritos at the Earth Elements kitchen. Yep. Okay. Let's just try to get through this as quickly as possible. We're running out of time. Okay. Expenses. Ongoing expenses. You might have transaction fees, like for something like PayPal.
And liability insurance.
Yeah. I mean, you could just do like a payment collection software through your website that might be cheaper. There's just, like plugins for WordPress that will collect payments that might have lower fees than some other options. Anyway, okay. And then your accounting. Oh yeah, how much was the liability insurance?
Well, right now I'm paying $550 a year.
Okay, $550 a year.
But the more gardeners you have, that's going to go up.
But, and then
it's going to go up more when we start serving food.
Sure. And then bookkeeping. Yeah, I mean, if you're I would think that to pay a bookkeeper just to keep them on the payroll, or that they might want to get at least $500 a month. But I mean, if it's you, then maybe not.
For now, it's just me. But
Yeah. Okay. Well, then we're gonna say $0 to $500. Yeah. Okay. Calculate the minimum income you need to cover your expenses and pay yourself your minimum. Since your minimum is 0, there's not much calculation to do here, except that you need to cover that liability insurance, I feel. So let's try to make at least that $550 a year quickly. Get that covered. And then you were thinking you could charge $100 per person. And that you need, I already wrote this down, I'm just copying this, 200 homeowners. That's how many you need. Okay. What systems do you need to put in place to start making money right away? I'm thinking like that crowdfunding site.
What systems do we have to put in place? We have to have gardeners that are comfortable saying that they're worth $25 an hour to help a homeowner change the way they do landscaping. And so far I've got 3 of those, I think. And then I need, in order to get more of those, I need a regular influx of new clients, new homeowner clients, which is why I think our on-the-ground marketing plan is probably the highest priority.
Yeah, marketing plan. Absolutely. Okay, crowdfunding site and a marketing plan. Okay, and then I have this question of like, looking at this as an experiment, what assumptions are you testing with these first customers or investors?
What assumptions? We're assuming that we can deliver $100 worth of value to the homeowner in that 4 hours every month. And so the homeowners will stick with us and want to have that service continue at least throughout the year. And then once they find that that's valuable to them, that they would continue from year to year.
Good. I like that answer. That's clear.
That deliver the value.
Yeah. And then to make a plan of action in the next few weeks, what are you going to start working on first?
So we're going to try and get some input from both our homeowners and our gardeners about what we would need in the way of a flyer and a door hanger. That the potential gardeners would be comfortable knocking on doors and talking to homeowners about it, and then potentially be able to get those callbacks from just leaving the door hanger on the door if you don't have somebody answering. And then in the meantime, working on getting the gardeners to think in terms of them owning the partnership, which is Caroline's, or the consultant's role to start anyway.
Yeah.
Is to what kind of see if she can explain it better than I have in terms of the fact that this is your organization, you own it. How would you like to move forward?
Okay, cool. Think about our partners and ask them what they need or what they want. Okay, very last question. What are your system constraints? And what can you do to alleviate them? What's your biggest constraint right now? What's holding you back?
The ability to communicate. So, like I say, I can put out an event and invite people to come and spend an hour with me, seeing what we do, and me explaining the difference between a sustainable system and an unsustainable system. cycling carbon instead of not cycling carbon, or the difference between creating huge waste streams of carbon and nitrogen or cycling those on site to build fertility without having to buy fertilizers and pesticides and herbicides. That's the whole picture that exists as a single idea for me.
Yeah. So your ability to communicate the value proposition in kind of a marketing sort of way.
Right. I lost your audio again.
Sorry. Communicating the value proposition in a marketing sort of way where you can broadcast it maybe, or have more people hear it.
I've exhausted my channels of my social media connection. So I need to find a way to get my gardeners excited about using their connections. And we're here, we can give that hour-long presentation, week in and week out. I'm very practiced at that presentation. But I need people to come I need interested people to come and listen to it. So I need my gardeners to start their outreach on saying, this is what I want to do. And these are the things that you can, if you need more information, these are the things we can provide to you.
Yeah. So you need your gardeners to do more, and then you might just need help with marketing.
Right.
Which isn't me, by the way. I'm not a marketing expert. I wish I could help you more with that. I'm more the structuring expert, which is why I kept bringing up co-ops, and that's the part I'm wanting to get to, which is next. But yeah, hopefully you can find somebody who has more of a genius in marketing. Because I've got to figure that out for myself. Maybe we'll both come up with some answers soon.
Well, that's one of the things that the consultant suggested, that she could potentially bring a bunch of homeowners to us, and is there a way that we can compensate her for that? And I mean, if we had 10 gardeners that said, yes, I'm willing to take on 20 homeowners, maybe for the first month, couple months, that they share a part of their revenue with the person who brought the client in.
Sure. Yeah, like we talked about, that sign-on bonus kind of thing.
Sure.
Awesome. Great. Well, that's all my questions for today. And and we kind of got started talking about the structure, which we'll be diving more into next time. And just to get you a little pumped for that, the first thing we'll be looking at is the circles of engagement. So like, who's in that kind of newcomer phase, and what does that look like? Who's a part, like maybe a homeowner is at a certain level of engagement in the system, and then beyond that, maybe the gardeners are at a level, and then beyond that, who's in the very center, making most of the decisions, who's there with you, who's at the same level as you, and kind of defining what those groups are and how people get into those groups, what they do to get in, and what they're continually giving the organization and what they're getting. So if you want to think about that a little bit, that'll be the first thing.
I will think about that.
We'll try to define. And by the way, I am fine with sharing, this is all on the internet anyway. I'm fine with sharing these documents with Caroline. Hi, Caroline. We know each other. And, I'm too busy with my master's degree right now to help you any more than I already am. But yeah, I'll just pass it on to her and let her help you more. But hopefully we can kind of both give you input on the structuring piece, because I know she's really good at that too. So yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for joining me. And thank you everyone else. We'll see you next time on YouTube probably. So bye.